Hey everybody, what's up and welcome back to the channel. One of the most frequent things that people want tips on growing zinnias, so I thought I'd put this video together and try to help grow some really gorgeous zinnias. Before we get started, there is a new zinnia ebook down in the merch shelf of my little YouTube store there that might be helpful. It's just a great way to support the channel. All the information in it is also here on the channel and on my blog in one way or another, but it's just a nice condensed version that might be useful. Also, feel free, please leave a comment. It helps the channel so much. So if you have any questions, just leave them down below and I'll try to answer them. Now, the best way that I start zinnia seeds, I use the winter sowing method. Now, the winter sowing method basically uses a bottle as a miniature greenhouse so that you can start your zinnia seeds about 1 to 2 weeks earlier before your last frost date. If you're unfamiliar with winter sowing, please do watch the winter sowing playlist on my channel. It will be very helpful. Since I grow a lot of zinnias, I use this low tunnel for my winter sowing instead of the bottles, okay? You can also direct sow the zinnia seeds after your last frost date has passed. That's perfectly acceptable, but I like to sow them in trays just so I can have a good sized transplant zinnia seedling to go into the garden so that I know I won't have any blank spaces left or I won't be wasting any of the zinnia seeds. Before I can transplant the seedlings, I need to work the bed and add some really nice compost to that bed. Make sure it's nice and weed free and the soil is just nice and fluffy and loose to a depth of about 1 foot is what I generally do. As you can see, when it comes time to transplant, my seedlings are actually pretty big. I sow them in these cell trays and they are easy to just pop out and handle and transplant. You definitely do not want to let the seedlings get any larger than this. This would be too large to get them larger than that, because when you transplant them at a larger size, you can see the smaller size here transplanted easily, while the bigger size is kind of flopping over and falling over and shows a lot of transplant shock. Basically, transplant shock just kind of happens when the conditions are less than ideal during transplant. I watered these very, very well and they recovered within a few days, but again, it's not ideal. And of course, if you are starting your seeds indoors and your seedlings indoors, you want to have that period of hardening off is very, very important, or you could lead to just complete losses of your zinnia seedlings, which of course we do not want. We want beautiful, healthy, lush zinnia plants. So here are those same transplants about, 2, maybe 3 weeks later. You can see they've all rebounded. They're growing nice and straight and tall, and our leaves are nice and lush and healthy and strong. That's exactly what we wanted. So as the season progresses, we're just going to keep an eye on this. I generally do not fertilize my zinnias during the growing season just because I've amended those beds with a nice finished compost, and my soil is nice and healthy, really making sure to replenish my soil every single growing season. Of course, if you would like, you can use a balanced fertilizer of your choice. Again, that choice is up to you. Always want to make sure you're researching what you're using in the garden. Once they get a little bit bigger, I am going to pinch them, or I'm going to use my garden snips. You can see all I'm going to do is I am just going to remove the new growth, and we want new branches to form. I'm just going to take that growth out. In this case, they had already started to bud because I was a little bit late, but usually I do it before they bud. And we want to promote and encourage that side shoot so that we produce plants that are nice and tall and strong and bushy, and most importantly later in the season that are completely covered in flower blooms. You can see even a few weeks later after this, the zinnia patch looks much denser and much fuller because our plants have started to branch so well. The spacing in my flower patch of the zinnias is about 6 inches apart between each plant. I like to plant them very, very close. The zinnias don't seem to mind too much with this close spacing. However, I find that any closer spacing than this will cause the flowers to be a little bit smaller than I would like. So this seems to be ideal here in my yard. After you have pinched the flowers, it should also note that you can take cuttings from the zinnias and root some of your favorite types of zinnia flowers. I have a complete video on this whole process. If you're interested, I'll put the link in the card so that you can click on that and check that out. We also have a zinnia growing playlist with lots and lots of information about different types of zinnias, different cultivars of zinnias, as well as growing them, so that might be helpful. Now that they have gotten pretty big, what I am going to do is I am going to use some horizontal trellis netting. You can see laid out on the side there. And I am going to arrange that with my post so that the zinnia flowers can grow straight up through that netting. What that netting is going to do is it's going to keep my flowers from falling over in the wind, in the strong thunderstorms that I get, and the heavy rain that I get as they get taller and taller. Without this netting, my flowers definitely will not survive for the entire season, in an upright position at least. So it is very necessary, as here in my yard, it is not uncommon for my zinnia plants to reach about 6 feet tall, just because my weather here in Kentucky in zone 6B7 is just so hot and humid, and zinnias seem to really, really thrive. Once they have started to bloom, obviously, we'll start to see the arrival of some very welcome pollinators and everything, as well as some very unique colors. It's one of my favorite parts of growing zinnias is that there are so many unique colors that we can use for cut flower arrangements. We have some scabiosa ones here. If you've grown those before, you know they aren't the most reliable type of zinnia. I still try to grow them here in my garden. Unfortunately, you can see either they'll be single. You also see lots of double types of zinnia, such as the Benary's Giants, which we'll see a little bit later in this video. So just that wide selection really is one of the main reasons that I love growing so many of these flowers, especially using them for cutting and cut flower arrangements and things like that. In using them for cut flower arrangements, there are several things you want to consider. What I like to do is I like to cut the flowers before the yellow ring in the center that you can see there has started to open. This will ensure that they are fresh and will keep a very long time in the vase. You can also kind of grab underneath the flower head on the stem and squeeze it. If that is nice and firm, then that is a good cut flower to choose for arrangement in a vase. And if it is hollow and weak, that's probably a flower that is past its prime and not good for cut flower use. Again, I have a video for zinnias as cut flowers in the Zinnia playlist that you might be interested in if growing zinnias for cut flowers is something that you would like to do. By late in the season, usually about the end of July or August, my yard is absolutely filled to the brim with these bright and colorful blooms. Of course, as the blooms grow, you want to either cut the flowers or I go through on a weekly basis and deadhead the flowers and remove them from the plants after they are spent. By doing this, we can promote new bloom and keep the plants flowering until the end of the season. You also might run into issues with powdery mildew and spot. Unfortunately, these issues are very, very common in zinnias, and some zinnias will be more prone to these than others, but controlling them is really a matter of garden kind of maintenance. Once powdery mildew arrives in my garden, I go ahead and pull the infected plants and get rid of them. The same with the bacterial spot. You might also run into some Japanese beetles. Here in my growing zone, these bugs are notorious for eating the zinnias. You can take measures to control these if you would like, but again, it is up to you. I personally like to just leave them alone and they eventually go away on their own. I like to keep my garden as natural as possible, which is why I never spray any kind of chemicals or anything. But if you do choose to do that, make sure you do your research and know what you're using and what you're introducing into your garden habitat and your garden environment. Other than those a few very minimal problems, zinnias are just so colorful and carefree and easy to grow, and I think they're a great flower, especially if you have never grown a flower before. They're a really, really great option. That's really about it for this video. I hope that it was helpful. Again, be sure to check out that Zinnia playlist. I feel like there is a lot of information that might be useful there. As always, leave your questions or comments down below, and I will do my best to answer them as best I can. Really just trying to grow more flowers. If you are new to the channel and you liked this video, please be sure to subscribe. We love to have you. We're just trying to grow our little gardening community here. I grow a lot of cut flowers and sometimes vegetables, DIY projects. Who knows what I am going to post next. Be sure to share it with your friends, all that good stuff. As always, the link to all our, our Patreon and everything is in the description below. It helps support the channel and keep us going, as well as our link to our blog and our shop, which sometimes we have seeds and bulbs. And of course, on the blog, you can find more information on all of the video posts that you see here. You can find that in written form and some photos as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you're having an incredible day, and I will talk to you all later. Bye, guys.